My name is Rose Bennett. I am 59 years old. I have lived long enough to know that holidays don't always bring joy. But nothing prepared me for the sight I faced on Christmas Eve. On the steps of my daughter's house, under falling snow, I found Clara, my own flesh and blood, curled up like a forgotten package. No coat, no gloves, just her thin dress shivering against the icy wind. Her breath rose in pale clouds while, through the window, I saw firelight dancing on polished glass and heard laughter pouring out like music from another world. Inside, her husband's family feasted around the fireplace, wine glasses clinking, stories flowing, faces warm with comfort. Outside, my Clara trembled, her shoulders hunched, her lips purple. For a moment, I froze. My mind could not piece the picture together. How could my child be left in the cold while the home blazed with warmth just a few feet away? "Clara?" I whispered. She looked up slowly. Her cheeks were streaked with frozen tears. "Mom," she murmured, the word small and broken, and it cut into me sharper than the cold itself. I took off my scarf, wrapping it around her neck. "You're freezing," I said. "What happened?" "Please," she begged softly. "Not here." Then the door cracked open. Heat, music, and the smell of roast poured out. A woman's voice, sharp and dismissive, floated into the night. If she can't handle the holidays, maybe she should stay outside until she learns some manners. Then came another wave of laughter. The door shut again. My heart broke and hardened in the same breath. I pulled Clara to her feet. "You're coming with me," I said. "Now. I want you to know who is telling you this story. I am Rose Bennett, a mother who has given, worked, and prayed her way through decades, believing love was enough to keep a family together. If you are listening now, and you are over 55, you might understand. The cruelest cold is not winter air but the silence of a child's rejection." I wrapped my coat tighter around Clara, guided her toward my car, and drove us away from that glowing house. The snow whispered under the tires, and each block we passed felt like leaving behind one world for another. And yet, I knew this night was not just about Christmas. It was the echo of years of sacrifices, years of swallowing hurts, years of believing patience would bring peace. To understand how we arrived at this doorstep, we must turn back the calendar. That night, after bringing Clara home and warming her hands around a mug of tea, I sat in the kitchen alone. The house was quiet except for the ticking of the old clock on the wall. My eyes drifted toward the notebook on the shelf. Its pages were worn, the cover bent from years of being opened and closed. Inside, each line was a story not of dreams or poetry, but of dollars and cents, shifts and overtime, the silent arithmetic of survival. I opened it and began to read. There it was, page after page, year after year, the record of a mother's sacrifices. I remembered the nights when Clara was little and fevers kept her awake. I would rock her in one arm while grading papers from the community college class I taught. Then, when she finally fell asleep, I'd pack a bag and head to my night shift at the nursing home. Sleep was a luxury I rarely touched, but Clara's shoes always fit, her lunches were always packed, and she never knew how tight the money really was. There was the year the furnace broke in December. I had to choose. Fix the furnace, or buy Clara the winter coat she had begged for. I chose the coat. I boiled water on the stove and set pans around the house to keep the air from freezing. She never knew how cold I was under my blankets because I told her stories until she fell asleep. Later, when she reached high school, I picked up cleaning jobs on weekends. My hands ached from scrubbing, my back burned from bending, but every extra dollar went into a jar marked college. When Clara was accepted to university, I cried not just from pride, but from the fear of how I would pay. I took a loan against the house. I told myself, if my daughter gets her education, it will all be worth it. When Clara graduated, she wanted a wedding that sparkled with flowers, music, and promise. I worked extra shifts again, pawned the last jewelry I had from my mother, and smiled as Clara walked down the aisle in her white dress. I remember thinking, at least she won't start her marriage with debt. And when Clara and David struggled with their mortgage, they called me in tears. I pulled from my savings the little I had and helped them keep their house. I told myself, this is what mothers do. They give, even when there's nothing left to give. Every page in that notebook is a confession of sacrifice. Every line is me saying yes when I should have said I have nothing more. I pressed my hand against those worn pages and asked myself, How could the same daughter for whom I had given everything end up shivering outside on Christmas Eve? And now, dear listener, I turn the question to you. Have you ever sacrificed in silence, worked the extra hours, skipped your own meals, pawned your treasures so your children could have more? Have you ever wondered if they even remember? If you have, share it in the comments. Write one moment, one memory. Not for pity, but so others know they are not alone. Because when we tell our stories, we shine a light for one another. I thought back to the birthdays I skipped celebrating so Clara could have parties with balloons and cakes. To the clothes I wore long past their life so she could have the dress she wanted for the dance. To the loans I signed, my hand trembling but my heart steady. All of it, every sacrifice, was a brick laid in the hope that my daughter would be safe, respected, loved. And yet, the sight of her outside that warm house showed me those bricks had not built a shelter. They had built a wall I could not see through. I closed the notebook. The kitchen felt colder even with the heater humming. I stared at the empty chair across from me, the one where Clara used to swing her legs while eating the meals I cooked. The truth pressed down heavy. Sacrifices don't guarantee gratitude. Love doesn't always return the way it was given. And sometimes, children who were carried in warmth will grow to let their parents stand in the cold. But this night was not just about sacrifice remembered. It was the beginning of a new chapter one, where those sacrifices would be forgotten, dismissed, even twisted into debts used against me. For what came after Clara's marriage was not the closeness I dreamed of. It was silence, distance, and finally, words so sharp they cut deeper than any winter wind. The years after Clara's wedding were not what I dreamed. I thought marriage would bring us closer, that I would be welcomed into her new life. Instead, each passing year pulled her farther away. The phone rang less often. Holidays that once filled my home with warmth became fewer. And when Clara did visit, her words carried a weight that didn't sound like my Clara at all. They sounded borrowed, the echo of her husband's family. One Sunday lunch at their house is carved into my memory. The table gleamed under the chandelier, silverware polished, wine poured. Laughter floated through the air, but it felt rehearsed, almost brittle. I sat quietly, watching Clara move around her kitchen. She was graceful, but distant, as if there was a wall between us. My fork had barely touched the roast chicken before David leaned back in his chair, his eyes, cool and assessing, fixed on me. "An old woman doesn't need a big house like yours, Rose," he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "It's wasted space. You should think about signing it over now, while you still can." His words hit me harder than any winter storm in all my 70 years. I turned to Clara, my daughter, my only child, the girl I had carried through long nights of fever, the girl I had worked 2 jobs to feed. She sat silent beside him. Her fork scraped across her plate but never lifted to her mouth. I waited for her to speak, to defend me, to remind her husband who I was. But all she whispered, barely loud enough to hear, was, "Mom, maybe he's right. Maybe it's time to let go of the past." My chest ached as I pressed the napkin into my lap, gripping it like a lifeline. I wanted to shout, to remind her of the mornings I walked miles in the cold so she could stay warm, of the dresses I patched together so she would never feel less than the other girls. But I said nothing. Instead, I folded that napkin slowly, as if control alone could protect my dignity. That night, back in my kitchen, I opened my old notebook, the one where I had recorded every sacrifice, every dollar saved, every plan for Clara's future. Each page reminded me of what I had given so she could stand tall. Now those sacrifices were being twisted into debts. It felt as though love itself had turned into chains around my neck. Months passed. Clara avoided my eyes when she visited. Calls came only when she needed something, a favor, a check, a ride. The laughter in her voice was gone. The warmth had cooled into duty. And then came the night that froze me to the bone. Clara thought I couldn't hear. She thought age had dulled my senses. But I heard her voice sharp and clear through the thin walls of her kitchen. "She just won't sign it," she hissed into the phone. "I don't know how to make her understand. Maybe it would be easier if she wasn't around anymore." The glass in my hand slipped, shattering across the floor. My own daughter's words, cutting, cold and final, pierced deeper than any wound I had ever known. I leaned against the wall, my breath caught in my throat. Have you ever felt that sting, dear listener? Have you ever poured your heart into your child, only to hear them speak as if your absence would make their life smoother? If you have, then you know the silence that follows is louder than any scream. I swallowed my pain day after day. I smiled when I had to. At church, I shook hands. At the grocery store, I nodded hello. I played the part of the cheerful neighbor while inside. My heart crumbled. And if my story touches you, if you see your own reflection in these words, I ask you kindly, give this video a like. Not for me alone, but so other parents in quiet pain can find it too. And, if you wish to walk with me through more stories, please subscribe. Together, we can create a place where our voices are not lost, where our sacrifices are not forgotten. But David's pressure did not ease. It grew sharper, bolder. At family dinners, he would slide papers across the table with a pen ready. "Just a signature, Rose," he said tightly. "It will make things easier for everyone." Clara sat beside him, her lips pressed together, refusing to meet my eyes. My hands shook, but I pushed the papers back. "No," I said quietly, though my voice carried more strength than I felt. David's jaw clenched. Clara bit her lip. The air grew heavy, pressing down on me until I could hardly breathe. In that moment, I felt like an intruder in my own daughter's life. I was no longer the woman who had carried her, fed her, built her dreams. I had become an obstacle, something to be moved aside. The nights after those dinners were endless. I lay awake replaying every word, every silence, every look that told me I no longer belonged. I wanted to believe that love could fix this. I wanted to believe that blood could hold us together, but the more I endured, the clearer it became. Endurance was destroying me. And that was when I knew silence would not save me. Which is why my story now moves to the breaking point, the moment I could no longer bow my head and whisper, yes. The moment I had to rise, not just to protect my house, but to protect the dignity of a mother who gave everything and deserves, at the very least, not to be erased. The breaking point came at another family gathering. The Whitmore's house glowed with Christmas lights, and the table stretched with roasted meats, fine china, and silver that caught the light just so. I knew what was waiting. As soon as I sat down, David slid a folder across the table. His smile was practiced, thin. "David, Rose, we've talked about this before. It's just a simple document. Power of attorney, nothing complicated, one signature, and it makes everything easier." I looked at the folder, then at him. My hands did not move. "Rose. Easier for who, David? For you? For the bank? Or for the people sitting warm inside while my daughter froze on the steps?" The room went silent. Forks stopped midair. Clara's face turned pale. "Clara. Mom, please don't, please." "Rose. Don't what, Clara? Don't speak the truth?" David's smile slipped. His jaw tightened. "David, this is for your own good. You're not getting any younger." "What if something happens? Don't you want to know your affairs are in order?" I leaned forward, my voice steady though my heart pounded. "Rose, my affairs are in order. My lawyer, Mr. Carter, saw to that. You want control, David, not responsibility." Gasps around the table. Evelyn Whitmore, David's mother, placed a hand on her pearls. "Evelyn, Rose, that's a serious accusation." I turned to her. "Serious? Do you want serious? I have pages of notes, dates, words you thought I wouldn't hear. I have Clara's own tears, shed outside your door while you laughed by the fire." The silence cracked. David slammed his fist on the table. "David, you had no right to record conversations. You're invading our privacy." I raised my chin. "Rose, I didn't need to record. Your cruelty records itself in every bruise of silence, every dismissal, every insult my daughter has carried." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "Mom, stop." I turned to her, softer now. "No, Clara. For too long I stayed quiet. I told myself endurance was love. But love without dignity is slavery. And I will not live like that anymore." The room buzzed. Abigail, David's sister, muttered, "She's losing her mind." I stood, my voice rising. "Rose. No, I am finding it. I have given my youth, my health, my savings, even the roof over my head, for my daughter's life. And now you ask for my house? For my signature? For my silence? No more. Not one more inch." David's face reddened. He pushed the folder closer. "David, sign it, Rose. Don't make this ugly." I shoved it back with such force the pen rolled across the table. Rose. It's already ugly, David. You made it ugly the day you let my daughter sit in the snow while you laughed by the fire. The words landed heavy, the truth hanging in the air. And to you, dear listener, what would you have done at that table? Would you have stayed quiet, signed the paper, and swallowed your dignity one more time? Or would you have stood, as I did, and said, enough? Tell me in the comments. Because these moments define us not just as parents, but as human beings. The shouting grew louder. David cursed under his breath. Evelyn tried to calm him. Clara sobbed quietly, torn between blood and marriage. But I knew the choice before me: surrender or stand. I chose to stand. I gathered my purse, straightened my shoulders, and looked at them one last time. Rose, I will never sign your papers. I will never hand over my life. If you want to take me to court, I'll meet you there. And if you want to call me difficult, go ahead. Better difficult than disposable. With that, I walked out. The night air hit my face like truth, cold, but clean. My steps were steady. For the first time in years, I felt my spine, strong and unbending. But leaving that house was not the end. It was only the beginning of what came after the letters, the silence, and the hardest lesson a mother can learn. I left their house with my dignity intact, but dignity does not quiet a mother's heart. What came next was not silence, but the hardest part: learning how to live after the storm. For the first time in years, I was not chasing after anyone. I was not answering midnight calls for money. I was not bending my back to keep peace at tables that never welcomed me. Instead, I woke up in my own bed, poured my own coffee, and asked myself, what do I want to do today, not for others, but for me? I joined a book club at the local library. The first meeting, I sat at a round table with women my age, each with her own scars, her own stories. We laughed about the plots, we cried at the sad chapters, and for 2 hours, no one asked me to sign anything. They only asked, what did you think? I signed up to deliver meals to seniors who couldn't leave their homes. Carrying a warm plate to someone else's door, hearing their thanks, it filled the hollow places in me. I realized something I should have known long ago. Giving feels different when it is chosen freely, not demanded. And in the quiet evenings, I met with Mr. Carter, my lawyer. Together, we built what I call my exit plan. If one day I don't wake up, everything I own, this house, my savings, even the quilt Clara made in 4th grade, will go to a foundation for retired nurses. That way, what I spent my life building will serve others who gave their strength to heal. It gave me peace to know that my life's work would not be twisted or sold off. Weeks passed. I grew stronger. And then one morning, I opened my mailbox and froze. A letter. The handwriting stopped my breath. Clara. My hands shook as I carried it inside. I sat at the kitchen table, the same table where she once swung her legs as a child, and opened the envelope. Mom, it began. I don't know how to explain myself. I know I hurt you. I know it looked like betrayal. Maybe it was. But you have to understand, I was under pressure. David's family wanted things I couldn't refuse. I don't expect forgiveness right now. I just hope one day you'll believe I never stopped loving you. I read it once, then twice. Tears blurred the words. It wasn't a full apology. There were excuses tucked between the lines. Yet somewhere between the justifications I saw fear, regret, and maybe, just maybe, a crack where love was still alive. I folded the letter and placed it in the drawer beside my notebook of sacrifices. 2 records, side by side, one of everything I gave and one of what I almost lost. That night I sat on the porch, watching the sun slip behind the trees. The air was cool but not cruel. I wondered if Clara would come back one day, not for papers or signatures, but simply to sit beside me again. I don't know the answer. Life does not hand out neat endings. Betrayal does not erase love, but love does not erase betrayal either. The bond between mother and child is not a chain, it is a thread. Sometimes it frays, sometimes it knots, sometimes it snaps. Whether it can be mended, that is the question I leave hanging in the air. And maybe you, listening now, know that question in your own bones. If you feel my story in your heart, if it reminds you of your own struggles, I ask you, please give this video a like. Not for me alone, but so other parents sitting in silence can find it and know they are not forgotten. And if you disagree with me, if you think I should have signed or stayed quiet, or walked a different road, then leave the number 6 in the comments. Tell me your truth. I want to hear it. And if you want to walk with me through more stories like this, stories of love, betrayal, survival, and hope, please subscribe to this channel. Together, we can build a place where no voice is silenced, where every sacrifice is honored. As for me, I will keep living. I will water my roses, read with my book club, and carry warm meals to strangers who become friends. I will keep my trust papers safe, and Clara's letter tucked away, waiting for the day when perhaps she knocks on my door, not for help, not for signatures, but for love. And until that day comes, I will be here, alive, steady, choosing dignity, choosing purpose, and choosing to believe that even in betrayal, there can still be room for hope.